if we get involved in numbers, I'll write on this so you guys can see it. But otherwise, all right. When the picture of the shark was up here, and he said, have you ever been afraid? There's one thing that you should be afraid of in the United States, and that is the certainty of poverty if you don't do something about your future. That's not something that might happen to you. It's something that will happen to you if you don't get some assets. If you fall for the government schools training that just keep asking permission and doing that, and you'll be okay because you'll have Social Security to back you up. Remember, one day that Social Security check will come because the government would never lie, but it won't buy you lunch. That's not a good thing. It's your responsibility. Every single action you take or don't take is your responsibility. One of the things that troubled me watching this room earlier was people got up and said, I've got a house that you could buy for $30,000, spend $30,000 on it, and have $90,000. And I don't know anything about your numbers at all. But I do know that if you're in a real estate meeting where there are other real estate people and they say, I have a deal, you should not be writing it down and thinking about it. You should write an offer. You should always have 3x5 cards. That's my approved contract. I went to a Wealth Builders meeting 2 years ago. Wealth Builders is an old RIA in my market from back to in the 70s. And at the meeting, they have what they call a have-wants. You ever heard of those kinds of things? And so Tom Harper got up. Tom's a great guy, old investor, hard money lender. And he had a little house, a crummy, well, I don't want to say horrible, an interesting little house on a really great lot in a really great neighborhood. And how do you think he got it? Have you ever seen anybody who was a hard money lender? Yes. Why do hard money lenders lend? Because they like excitement, right? They want to put all the money into the worst deals in the community. Because the people who have better deals don't need to pay 12% and 5 points. And so the hard money lenders take on all the detritus, all the terrible, risky stuff in your marketplace. And once in a while, they don't get lucky, and so the property doesn't sell, and they end up foreclosing it. So now, anybody got to guess how Tom ended up with this house? He foreclosed it. He came to the meeting. He said, I'll sell this house for $10,000 down and $400 a month. And everybody in the meeting either took a note, gee, Tom's got a house he'll sell for $10,000 down and $400 a month, or they said, huh, and they didn't even write it down. What did I do? I wrote him an offer. I said, you got a deal. $10,000 down, $400 a month. And I acquired that house, and the tenants who were in it, who were okay, they were able to pay $800 a month, which meant I could afford to pay Tom $400 a month because taxes, insurance, everything else made that up. And then 3 years later, a builder made me an offer of $115,000 for it, which I exchanged out of. And now, who was involved in that deal? See, wealth building, for those of you who haven't heard Gary Johnston, you should. Gary talks about wealth building is a team sport. Now, Gary tends to say investing is a team sport, but wealth building is a team sport. Look at this. I went to this meeting. The meeting was run by Mike Radetzky's family. Mike was an old exchanger. I'd gotten to know him, done business with him. He was my friend. He's since passed on. Now his kids and his younger brother are running the meeting. And I'm still doing business with them, and I've closed deals with them. And then what happened? Tom Harper, a guy who I've done business with in the past, who I've helped him when he's had difficult loans by helping the people to work it out with Tom. I know him. He's my friend. He got up. He said, I'll accept $10,000 and $400 a month. And I wrote a contract and I closed that deal. And then I provided housing for people who could only deal in modest housing. This house was barely better than a garage. And then I sold it to a young contractor who was going to build on it. Those relationships, that's what makes real estate such a fascinating thing, because we build a team of comrades. We are capitalists. And what is the reason that capitalists are the proudest people on earth?
They create their wealth.
Capitalists always give better than they take. They never take more than they give. They never take better than they give. How do you know that? Has anybody here ever made a deal? Two of you? I didn't know this crowd was going to be this bashful. When I make a deal, I say, I will give you a condo in Florida for that rundown, abandoned farm in Maine. And you say, you've got a deal. What do we know? I gave better than I took. How do we know that? Did they give me better than they took from me? Yeah, why? I liked a farm full of wild animals better than a homeowners association. She liked a homeowners association on the beach in Florida near her family and warm as opposed to Maine. That's why we made that deal. No one applied numbers to that deal. We applied benefits to that deal. That is really important. Remember, value is not a number. Value is subjective. Now here's the example. If those weren't good enough for you, my granddaughter, when she was 9, was horrified that my son Jay, her uncle, moved from St. Petersburg, right off of 4th Street, to Seminole. And she said to me, Grampy, why would Uncle Jay move away from his house? I said, well, Lola, he moved closer to me. He came to a better place. He got a home in Seminole, right around the corner from me. It's wonderful. She said, now, Grampy, Uncle Jay owned a house next to an ice cream stand that had a swimming pool. What could be better than that? What did that tell you? Lola wouldn't have made the deal. That's what's happening in the real world. Those RIAs that tell you this is how you learn to find funding. Funding is nonsense. Because funding, giving people money, is cruel. And people with money get in trouble and get the least that's offered to anyone in America. I've got an American Express savings ad in my pocket somewhere that shows they're offering the highest rates in America today. You know what it is? 0.5%. Is there anybody here who knows someone who could borrow their money or who would buy a house and pay more than that? I've offered as much as double that. You guys pay no attention. All right. Or your money's cheaper here than my money is where I am. But in any case, value is subjective. And you need to find out. I bought a house in 2019. I bought it from a lady who had lived in the house since 1953. Now, do you think there's any emotional attachment to that house? I bought that house for $261,000. She had an offer from a builder of $350,000 cash. Why would she accept my offer of $261 instead of $350? Yeah, I was such a nice guy, that was it. No, and actually she already had her next house. She already had her next house. That was a real good point. If I'd had the house she wanted to live in, that might have been exactly why. But in this case, she had her house. So why would she do that? Why would she take?
You wouldn't tear it down?
I wasn't going to tear it down. She had a builder, and it was a beautiful 7,000 square foot lot across from a 15-acre park on Tampa Bay. And every offer she got was from people who were going to tear down her home where she'd raised her family, where her husband had passed away, where she'd been living since 1953, and no one else cared. No one else asked. Now, why did I get involved in that? Because your job is to find problems to solve, and then what? Solve them, help people. I talked to a woman on the street where I live. I live on a sandbar that they dredged and filled with sand inside of a seawall in order to create a subdivision that was bayfront back in the 50s. Today, they would all be executed for even proposing that. But it's there now, it's too late. And when I said to the woman, remember I said problems to solve? Your first question to everyone who's got real estate that they're threatening to sell, or they're considering selling, or they're talking to you, your question is, why would you sell a nice house like this? Because you need to discover what's changed in their life, because that's where the opportunity lies. You will find people like Lola who wants to move to the ice cream stand. You will find people like Mrs. Eller who wanted not to have her home for the last 70 years torn down. You will find people who can't handle stairs in a beautiful home, but that home, the stairs are now threatening. And this is something I get a lot in Florida. The doctors have said you can't handle those stairs anymore. That beautiful home that she loved, she can't handle it any longer. And do you know, if you don't bother and you just go and throw cash at it, you are less apt to get that deal than if you find out, gee, in the event that I buy your house, where are you going to go? Where do you think a person might go? Another house. What if that other house was in Ukraine? See, so does location have anything to do with it? Yeah. So other house near what? Job, school, family. Yeah, hospice, I'd rather not. All right? But those are the kinds of things that happen. The house in Madeira Beach was a spectacular 2.5 on the water. She had raised her family. She was alone in that house. Doctor said, you can't do stairs anymore. So that meant 4 bedrooms are upstairs, 2 of the 2.5 baths are upstairs, and the stairs are a threat to her. When I got talking to her, she doesn't have family nearby, but she has a church nearby, and she's very involved in that church. And so, how did I acquire that house? I gave her a condo in exchange for her house. What did that do for her? Elevator, no more stairs, no lawn to take care of, and near her church, where friends and family, in terms of the extended family in the church, it's about the people, and you have to care about them. That's where the deals come from. That's where you win. Now, I will tell you, I bought a house 2 years ago from a lady subject to a mortgage, and it was subject to an institutional mortgage, which is bad, dangerous, inflexible, terrible. Why did I buy it? Greed. I knew I was taking risk. I knew I was dealing with evil institutions. So when I made that deal, what's my next job? Has anybody ever had a bank loan on a house? What do you do with those? Get rid of them. Why? Why would you leave those dangerous loans in place? How would you get rid of them? Well, pay them off, but pay them off with somebody else's money. All right? How much money do you think is in the banks around here? Probably enough to pay your mortgage off, right? And what are the banks paying? 1/10 of 1%? 1/4%? Could you go get a sandwich board and stand out front saying, I pay more? Can you talk to your neighbors and let them know you pay more? That's important. I buy subject to institutional debt, which I hate, but I take the institutional debt out as fast as I can. Why? What happens if I owed a note to Roger and I said, Roger, I'd like to move the note to a better house? Do you think he would move it to a better house so he had $200,000 in equity instead of $100,000? Yeah. All right. If I said that to anybody here in the room, I've never missed a payment, I just want to move it to better collateral, would anybody do that for me? Try that with Bank of America or Mr. Cooper or Wells Fargo someday. And that's valuable, important stuff. I heard you guys talking about wraparounds. And remember, wraparound is just a leveraging technique. It's not a note. It's not a mortgage. It is creating or discovering a superior income to service an inferior debt or obligation. So the typical example that you get is, I buy a house, there's a mortgage on it at 4%, but I buy the house to net 6% cash flow. I take the rent from the tenant, that's wrapping the underlying, and I pay down the underlying. That's what it is. But a couple of years ago, I got a call. Again, I do business with friends. I started doing business and never let go of any of the people who I ever helped. Remember I talked about capitalists always giving better? If you gave better to someone else, now I know no one in this room except one person has done any other business, but if you'd done any other business, if you'd ever bought anything, or if you'd ever sold anything, or if you ever rented anything, or if you ever borrowed anything, or if you ever seller financed anything, you did something good for those people. How do you know? Because they closed. With no coercion, people don't say, gee, I think I'll see if I can make my life worse. Only the government gets to do that to you. People are honorable and they give better than they take all the time, 100% of the time. I know when I make a move, I'm moving to better myself. Have I ever been wrong? You're damn right I've been wrong. I'm right more than I'm wrong. But in any case, every deal is a positive deal where you've helped someone. If you don't go back to those people and ask for help from them and help them, you're crazy. Because it's so much more efficient than starting over with new people. It's a team sport. Once you've closed with someone, never give up on those people. One of the things when I do the acquisition class, which is a basic capitalism class that I used to teach when America was freer, what happened is I talk about my fourth house, which I bought for $50,000 back in 1969. I bought it for $10,000 down, which I didn't have, and I promised $40,000 at 8% for 25 years. And I bought a fourplex. Now, how did those numbers come to be? Dawn and her husband lived in this fourplex. They'd lived there since they were married. Beautiful fourplex, 3 great apartments and a townhouse for the 4th unit, which was a great place to raise their kids. Their kids were now in their teenage years. So why do they want to sell it now? They wanted a single-family house for the kids. They want a single-family house, single-family neighborhood. They were willing to give up the multi to get to a single. So how did they think they were going to do that? They were going to sell it for $50,000 cash, take the $50,000 cash, and buy a house for $50,000 cash. Everybody understand that? The cash has no value aside from its exchangeability. A Federal Reserve note, anybody know what that is? Read a dollar, a bill, Federal Reserve note. All right? Has anybody here ever taken a note in a deal? Yes. Has anybody here ever lent any money? Yes. What does a note normally bring with it? Promise to pay. It's a promise to pay. Does it have payments? Promissory notes usually do. Have payments. What else do they have? Interest? Yeah. Maybe cash flow? What else do they have? Security. What's the note that's given to you by the federal government? How much interest does it bear? None. How much payments does it make to you? None. What's it have as collateral? It says, "In God we trust" on the back of it. People take that because of the greater fool theory. They take dollars and they trade it for something better. It is the tradability of dollars that give them the value. So these people are going to take $50,000 cash and buy their house for $50,000 cash. But they didn't have the cash buyer and they had found the house they wanted. And so what happens, I have matched mortgage payments many times. I've never done it hypothetically. I've always presented hypothetically, but when people find that next house, the house they want to move to, they don't want to lose it. And so what I can do is say, listen, I can't afford to give you $40,000 cash, but you're one of those sacred wage slaves here in America who can get a great loan. So what could an owner-occupant get for a loan on a single-family house, 80% loan-to-value today?
3%? 2%?
Nobody knows? I forgot no one in this room does any business. That's crazy. 4% 30 years? 4.5% 30 years?
5-ish?
Pick a number. I don't care what the damn number is.
5.
All right, 5% 30 years. All right, so what's the payment on that? $535 a month on a $100,000 loan. All right? Now, if the people are going to borrow $100,000, I can't, or they need $100,000, I can't give them $100,000, can I? But can I make payments of $535 a month? Yes. So I can give them a note on their house they sell me to match the payments they need to make. I can't give them the money, but I can make the payments for them. That has been a solution a number of times when I've had people who wanted to buy that next house. Typically, it becomes possible when they found that next house and they know if they don't put it under contract now, it will be gone. Do you ever have that happen in this market? So what happened back in the day when I did this, 80% loans were financed by the banks in my community at 8% for 25 years. That was the local bank in town. 8%, 25 years. So I said, I'll buy your fourplex and I'll give you $40,000 at 8% for 25 years, which will give you the payment to make to the bank so you can buy your house. Now, what's the problem I've got? I still owe them another $10,000 that they need to put down on their house, and I don't have $10,000. So now, where should you go when you need something? Did I say anything about friends? People you've done business with before, people you bought. I went and saw my tenant in my second building, and she had $10,000 in cash in the Beverly Cooperative Bank. How did I know that? Because I'm nosy. She's my tenant. She made an application. And so I went over to see her. I said, can you imagine, I'm going to buy that fourplex over on Lovett Street? And do you know that bank wants me to pay 9%? Is that crazy or what? Don't you have some money there? Yes, I do. Well, how much are they paying you? She looks, 2.5. What did I say?
I'll pay you more.
I'll pay you 9%. Why have the bank in the middle of this? Why should I pay them 9 and they give you 2? I'll give you the whole 9. She went down, took that money out of the bank. She lent me the money that I use as a down payment to buy my next house. No matter how many stories, no matter how many weird deals I do, and I do some weird deals, because I like people, and I like screwy deals. So anyway, no one believes I ever borrowed money from a tenant. It is the weirdest thing that people can't get their mind around that. But why would the tenant be happy for me? I got them in a nice house. I'm renting them a nice home. They're enjoying the use. I don't know where the picture went of the house up there, but the house picture, which I show you, that has all the parts that are available in every single deal, and you can use them and distribute them as you need to. But I just, in June of 2021, borrowed $150,000 from one of my tenants who had $180,000 in Wells Fargo, earning 1/10 of 1%. I'm paying her 6. Why would I pay her 6? More. It's a lot more. Is she better off because of that?
Yes.
Yes. Do I want a wealthy tribe around me? Yes. And so I want to do business with friends, financial friends, over and over and over again. Now, if I wanted to move that mortgage, do you think my tenant would move it to another house?
Yes.
Yes. That's because I can talk to them. So to the extent that you go back to every person you've ever bought from, sold to, rented to, borrowed from, and ask them for help, and offer to help them, you will find your life will get better and better and better. It is ever so much easier to do business with people who trust you, who think of you with a smile, because that's how you were what enabled them to get that house, to live in that nice apartment. I spoke at Tampa RIA, and I did my typical value is subjective, nothing objective about it. People don't want cash. They want to get the things, the goods and services cash can be traded for. And people yawned through the whole talk. And when I got done, they said, well, wasn't that interesting? And then they had their have-wants. This is 2010. Guy gets up. I have a real nice rental house in a good neighborhood in Tampa, and I want to sell it, and I want $100,000 for it. What did everybody do in the room? Made notes. Robert has a house in Baycrest, $100,000. What did I say? Why would you sell a nice house like this? And what do you think he did? He told us. Do you know why he wanted to sell a nice house like that? Because he and his wife wanted to provide a better car for their daughter. Because she had broken down with their 2 grandkids in the car 3 times in the last month. Can you see where that would be concerning? Well, so now, what is the bottom line with this house?
You need money for a car.
He doesn't need money. He needs a car. Do you need money to get a car? You know you don't need money to get a car. Go see him. He's got extra cars. Now, and you should know people with extra cars, because sometimes people want cars because cars have what? Utility. So what happened, this couple, the guy who was up there, wanted a car. So if you look at the little picture of the house, I gave them my van for an option to buy the rental house in 15 years and not before. What did that just do? Can anybody look at the picture of the house? What benefit? No, there was a picture of the house on a little picture colored thingy. Yeah, there's a picture of the house on the colored thingy. All right, well, okay. Huh? It's in the ones in front of me. It's next to the notes section. Anyway, those are the pieces of the house, and what I usually do is I see what everybody else needs, and I take whatever's left over. So, in this case, I took the growth in that house. Do you think houses have gone up from 2012 to today, 2010 to today? Yeah. What did I let him keep? The cash flow. Did that help him to have that cash? Remember how tough it was in 2010 and 2011? He kept his cash flow. He kept the thrill of management. I got the upside without the management. And the reason everyone was at that meeting remembers it is because I gave him my car and I had to bum a ride home because I didn't have a car. But what would you rather have? A Dodge Caravan or the upside in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage house in Tampa? That wasn't hard. It just took some effort to find out what's going on in his life. And finding out what's going on in his life then enables you to try to help him out. I got referred by a realtor to a lady who was going to sell her house. I went with the realtor to see the lady. She had a nice house with a 5.5%, $48,000 remaining loan on the house, which had a water view, was not waterfront. She had had some medical issues. She had been out of work, and she had run up $24,000 in credit card debt. So she had $8,000 on a Discover card at 19.9%, which I, prior to this, thought was usurious. And she had a Visa card at 29.9%. What was her first? 5.5%. My Roth IRA lent her $24,000, wrapping the 5.5%, $48,000. Everybody got that? So 48 plus 24 brought it up to 72, and I carried my IRA carried a mortgage for her at 10% interest only. So that's $7,200. That's $600 a month. So instead of paying $555 on her first, and then paying the credit cards, she wiped out the credit cards, and she was able to save the home. Now, did I do okay? Yeah, trust me, 10% wrapping 5.5% was a good deal for my IRA. But I didn't get the house. I didn't get the upside. I got the spread in the amortization of that underlying loan. And that was the amortization you'll see in that picture that I took. When I was a kid, my income was finally cresting above $8,000 a year. And I went to take a tax avoidance class from Charles Considine. Considine, the best you've ever seen. I walk into the class. My net worth is damn near $10,000. And he says, well, now, we know everyone in this room, your net worth starts at $1,250,000, and we're going to grow from there. Why was I in that room? Was it to shelter my $8,000? Why was I there to learn? What was I learning?
How to get where they were.
How to enable people who have big income to shelter it from taxes. And what did that teach me? How to do a 1031 exchange. Do you think I earned any commissions as an agent by being able to put together a 1031? By helping other people with those tax benefits. How to structure an installment sale so that people could defer their taxes without taking on more tenants. Do you think that helped me as a buyer to buy more properties? You bet. So I was taking classes to learn how to help others. I'd never let my taxes get that. I have a religious problem with taxes. And I actually went to Sunday school and learned, thou shalt not steal. And because I believe that, I'm going to move heaven and earth to keep from paying taxes. I will sit and sulk on the side of the road and think rather than work and earn money and pay taxes. Now, somebody says, gee, don't you work to better your family? Of course I do. Now, I used to be a real estate agent. And back in the early 1970s, I got $2,500 commission from buyers to be a buyer broker. So they would pay me $2,500 and I would buy a house for them. I'd get the contract, my name, assign it to them. I was a licensed broker, but that's how I got my commission, was in the form of assigning the contract and getting $2,500. Everybody understand that? Now, what happened is I needed $12,000 a year to live on back then. So the first deal, I got $2,500. Second deal, $5,000. Third and fourth deals, $10,000. Fifth deal, I'm over the $12,000 I need to live, right? What did I do after that? What did I do? Did I keep going? Did I ever sign a contract for cash? Hell no. Why not? Taxable income to have ordinary income. So what did I do instead? I bought the house and I got my reward in equity instead of in dollars, and thereby avoided the tax. See, it's your fault, your life. You build what you want to build. I talked to a young woman today who's talking to an older couple who I know, who I referred to her. And they're at the point in their life where they want to travel, they're having some health issues, they've got a great portfolio of nice houses. And the houses are over on the far side of Tampa, so they're not right in my marketplace, or else my kids would have ended up with more houses. And so I suggested to her that she lease the house, eliminating all the management so my friends could travel, and because they'd only lease the house, is there a taxable event? No, they're not selling the house. Now, if they lease optioned it, what could they do? They'd have to give some notice so they could do an exchange and either deliver better property, or if they had to be lazy, they would then give them cash, which they'd let sit with an accommodator, a qualified intermediary, and buy replacement property. But your job is to make a better world for others. Now, obviously, you got to make a better world for yourself and the people you love, but you need to discover what's going on in people's lives and let that be the driving force in making deals. People say to me all the time, do you do subject tos? Do you lease option? Do you do wraparounds? You do whatever it takes when you knock on a door or someone knocks on your door and says, help. And that's what a for sale sign is. It's a cry for help. Your job is to stop and try to help. You need to make an offer. Now, I heard it said earlier, did I hear somebody, maybe I misheard. Did I hear someone in this room say they were concerned about insulting a seller by making an offer?
It was Tim.
I don't want to point fingers, but in any case, that is a common and terribly damaging idea that realtors somehow developed. It is never, ever, ever, ever an insult to make an offer. Every single person who looks at that property and doesn't make an offer is insulting those people. They're saying, for free, I don't want that barn. But when you say, I love the house, but all I can afford is no money down and no payments. Is that a place to start? No. Yes. Now, what's their rate of return on no money down and no payments? No, it's not zero. It's extraordinary depending upon the person. Now, I got a neighbor who inherited a house. House is sitting there vacant, right? They inherited it. Now, the house has a $100,000 mortgage on it. The $100,000 mortgage is at 5% with payments of $600 a month. Who's making those payments? The people who inherited the house, right? The taxes on that house are $3,600 a year. How much is that? Another $300 a month. Now they're at $900 a month. Now, I always say, you know, most of the people I know keep the electricity and the utilities on in the house rather than just let the mold grow. How are you handling that? And you know what? Most of them have a utility bill. How much is that? $100 a month? Now, do you have to mow the lawn, or do you just let the mayor's stepson come over and mow it for $1,000 a trim? See, so all those expenses, how much is that? What do we just total it up to? Say $1,000 a month. All right, $1,000 a month. All right, now if I buy their house and it's $200,000 they're asking for it, and I give them a $100,000 note with no payments, no interest, no due date, whenever I sell it, they'll get the first 100. What is their yield on that 100,000? $1,000 a month, $12,000 more cash flow per year. That's a 12% return, and no one is bothered to do the math, so they don't know it. Expenses escaped are a crucial benefit to people who want to get rid of a house. And if you don't address that, you're foolish. And in our area, we get people who inherit a house and then they got a vacant house. And you know what happens to insurance in Florida and probably every place, but I don't know Texas. The insurance doubles or better on a vacant house versus the homeowners, which was there when the person died. And most people haven't thought it through, realizing homeowners means someone is home, looking after the house. But my house, some of you guys have been to my house. My house is on the water, bayfront house. I bought it the first time in 1996. And I bought it and 4 other houses and a condo and a Honda Del Sol car. Do you know what a Honda Del Sol car is?
Civic, 2 doors.
It's small enough to drive under your desk. It's this little, you say, what is that?
Tonka toy.
Yeah, Tonka toy. So anyway, he was retired. He bought 4 rental houses, and he bought this beautiful bayfront house, and he bought a brand new Honda Del Sol. And his negative cash flow was $3,500 a month. So I said, listen, Dave, I love your places, not so much the car. I said, I will take over all your payments if you'll give me all the houses and the car. And he said, well, I just spent tens of thousands of dollars assembling this for my retirement. I said, good work. I said, well, make it easy on yourself, but anytime you want to stop the $3,500 a month negative, the hemorrhaging, call me. A couple weeks later, he called me. I bought all of those houses and the car. What do you think I did then? I rented the houses that, rental houses should have been a clue, but he didn't rent them. I rented the rental houses. What did I do with the car? I added $5,000 in cash to pay the mortgage down to the point that some other damn fool would buy it. So I got rid of the car, and I got my waterfront home, and I moved in there with my son, and 2 months later, we were sitting in the dining room, and Dave, the guy who sold me the place, burst through the front door, came in and says, I just want to tell you, when we made this deal, you told me I'd be happy not having to pay $3,500 a month. He said, the first month came and I thought about it, but I wasn't that happy. He said, this month is the second month I don't have to pay $3,500. I just had to come by and say you were absolutely right and say thank you. Made a huge impression on my son. Because my son thought I was beating the guy up. What did I do? I said, I will stop $3,500 a month hemorrhage from your income. Making an offer is never an insult. A couple of years ago, I had a realtor who had a listing in St. Petersburg. They were asking $125,000 for the house. So I made him an offer. I said, I will give you $110,000 for the house. $10,000 down, and a seller carry $100,000 at 7.5% for 30 years. Everybody understand my offer?
Seller carry.
I'm going to buy the house with a promise to the seller that I will pay them $700 a month for 30 years, which was their money plus 7.5% on the outstanding balance. So it was a promise, and it was done in the form of a note and be secured by something acceptable to them. Okay? I mean, it's okay to say you got to do it again.
No, I mean, like, it's tote the note, they're carrying.
Promissory, yeah, sure, okay. Now, you tote the note, that's our car guys. Okay, well, in any case, that's what I offered. Do you know what the realtor said to me?
We'll never accept that.
What is wrong with you? You insulted my client. It's a $125,000 house. You offered $110,000. I said, I am so sorry. I said, I'll give you $120,000, $10,000 down, and a $110,000 purchase money note, seller carry, at 6% for 30 years. And the realtor says, what part of $125,000 did you not understand? I said, I'm just ashamed of myself. I'll buy it for $130,000, $10,000 down, and a $120,000 purchase money note at 4.5% for 30 years. And they took it. What did I just do? No, my first deal, no, it wasn't the same thing. Each and every offer I made to them was better for me. So the first deal was $10,000 down and $700 a month. That would have been a break even on that house. The second deal was $10,000 down and $660 a month. That's $40 a month in cash flow. The third deal was $10,000 down and $610 a month, $90 a month in cash flow. $1,000 a month, that's 10% cash on cash. And that's the deal they accepted. So you need to take responsibility for building the deals that you need to build to help others and to help yourself.
This is making me realize I'm real bad with percentages part. Everybody's talking percentages. I don't know the number just right off the top of my head.
Yeah, but if you are allowed to use a calculator. I don't because I'm old as hell. I mean, remember, I started in 1965 and I estimate a lot. See, when you find it, it's not $610. You plug it in your HP and it'll be $608.79. Remember I mentioned Gary Johnson? You can do that, or you can estimate and say, close enough, I like the house. And that, primarily, I estimate. Most people that I know use the calculator.
How long did it take you to really start catching
Well, I was talking to a couple of people earlier today. When I got out of high school, I study, I read. I want to get some assets to fund my lifestyle because I am more than fed up of waving my hand and asking permission. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get enough assets. The first 200 offers that I wrote failed to close.
Why?
Because I wasn't good enough. But back to, again, Tim talked about back in the old days when the listings were all on pieces of paper and occasionally they were bound in a book. They did inspections not on the computer. They did what? They'd have a caravan drive around and see all the new listings. What did that do for me? I got to go with all the other realtors and say, why did this sell? Why didn't this sell? What's going on with this? Is this a good price? I asked for help and I helped, and it was amazing what I learned. And I co-broked 1 month after getting my license. I co-broked a deal with Ralph Leonard, and my commission was $246.12. Big deal. I earned my money on commissions, and then in the third year, I earned 90% of my money on commissions and a little bit of rent. And on the fourth year, I earned 80% of my money. And in the fifth year, I earned only 70% of my money because I not only had some real estate that was paying rent, but I had some notes. Now, how did I come to get some notes? Has anybody ever heard of 80-10-10 loans?
Yeah.
80-10-10 loans, when I was growing up, was a common thing because there were more people with 10% down than there were with 20% down, right? So what would happen is a wise person would have the seller carry 10%, thereby eliminating the mortgage insurance required when you borrow more than 80. And so just the mortgage insurance savings made that a good deal. So as a real estate agent, I realized what makes my job easier. A bigger pool of buyers or a smaller one? Bigger pool. There's more people with 10% than there were with 20.
Right.
So I sold all my listings, or offered all my listings, with a 10% seller carried second. And guess what the sellers didn't want to do? They didn't want to carry a 10% second. They wanted money. They were Democrats. Yeah. So, so I said, listen, in the event that you'll take the second, you can assign it to me as my commission. And they did. So they take 90% of the cash, which was all the cash in the deal, and I get a 10% commission, earning 6 to 8% back in the early 70s. Was that a good return on my money? On money that I didn't have, by the way, if I hadn't got the sale closed? And that gave me a whole bunch of notes that brought in $15 a month, $20. I think the biggest one I ever had of those back in the day when the houses were 30 grand were, I think one I had $35. Now, what else did that do for me? Besides from giving me predictable income. Has anybody ever paid for a marketing service to mail letters to people? No? What was I doing as a broker? No, they were writing letters to me. They were paying for the stamps, and they were including a check. It was much better. And then guess what happened? 3 or 5 years went by, and the note ballooned. And so what happened? They'd call me up and say, but we don't want to sell. And I'd say, that's fine, I'll extend it. Just keep sending the checks. Just remember that I extended it so when it's time to sell, who do you think you should list it with? And see, so again, friends, doing things on purpose. And that is how I built to the point when I got out of college, I had 20 rentals. Now, that was 4 triplexes and 2 fourplexes. When I was 10 years out of high school, I finally had enough rent to pay all the bills. No extra money, but they paid the bills, which meant what? I'd achieved the goal that I wanted to not have to work. You do it on purpose. I thought there might be a question or two, maybe not. All right? Now, I heard people talking about trying to be realtors and deal with investors. Did I hear some things that sounded not as encouraging as I might have liked? Tonight, when I was standing outside, Tim was talking. Didn't somebody mention talking about investors and realtors?
What's a 1031?
1031 is an exchange where you can exchange real property that's held for use in your trade or business or for investment for other real property to be held for use in your trade or business or for investment. And the tax is deferred.
Like kind.
Like kind, but like kind is defined in this code section different than in others, because of course the IRS couldn't use English, it'd make it too simple. 1031 is you can exchange property held for use in your trade or business, your office building or your garage or wherever it is, right? For other property to be used in your trade or business or held for investment. Triplex that you rent.
Cannot be your personal home.
It cannot be inventory or your personal home. Now, it's not exactly right that it can't be your personal home. All right, I have a friend, you know what code section 121 is? All right, that's when you sell your personal residence and you've lived in it for at least 2 of the last 5 years, the government pays the tax for you. That's very nice.
People doing living.
That's publication 523 if you want to read about it or hand it to somebody. Okay, so irs.gov, publication 523. Now, I had a friend. Now, I heard about a guy who had a very, very, very nice house with a big piece of water frontage. And the problem was 121 only covered $250,000 in gain, and he had more gain than that because he lived there, everything's going up. Can you relate to that? By the way, when people say everything's going up, what they mean is the dollar's buying power is going down, just so you get it clear. But what happened is he had a boat dock. So guess what he began to do? Rent space at his dock. And what did he do with the rent? He actually reported on his tax return. He had rental income. So he 121'd his home and 1031 the rest of the equity into some rental properties. Well, that wasn't exactly luck. That was more planning. But in any case, that's your job. Scheming is so much fun.
It's not tax evasion, it's tax aversion.
I went to Sunday school. They said, thou shalt not steal. You should never support theft. You should never support theft. Another simple example, I have a friend who wanted to trim his estate. When I die, everything above the exclusion is taxed to my heirs at 40%. That's the U.S. death tax, okay? So now, picture this. Let's just pretend this would be something I would do. I go to my kids and to their spouses, and I say, listen, I'd like to give each of you $10,000. And they say, well, we think that's a good idea. And gifting, actually it's $16,000 this year. You can gift without it being reportable or taxable.
Yep.
Now, it'd be nice if you had 16, but in any case. All right, so I give it to the kids. Or I offer to give it to the kids. And Then I said, gee, now when you have this money, I want you to buy this lot on a lake in the mountains. And they said, well, you know, gee, Dad, we'd like it if you gave us the money, but we don't know if we want a lot. And so I said, what? I don't know if I want to give you the money. And they said, where is this beautiful lot? So now, they go out and they buy the lot for cash. Where did they get the cash? A gift from me, not taxable, not reportable. They then bought the land. So now they got an acre and a half on a lake in the mountains. And so I said, gee, you know, I really like that place. I'd like to lease it from you. So I signed a long-term lease with the kids. And I'm going to pay the taxes. That's fair rent, right? Then what did I do? Oh, then what might I have done? What I heard somebody did it once. Built a beautiful 6-bedroom chalet with 4.5 baths and a dock on the lake and balconies to sit out and look out on the lake. And who do you think enjoys going there? The kids, the grandkids, all playing together, going there in the summer. Now, one day, 10 years from now, the lease runs out. What happens to leasehold improvements when a lease runs out? When a lease runs out, who owns the leasehold improvements put into a property? The landlord. Who's the landlord? Yeah, the kids own the property. Now imagine if that was not just a family compound place, but imagine if that was my business place and I rented it. What does that do? Does anybody here have a business?
You defer the tax.
When you pay rent on a business, what do? You deduct it. Isn't it better to deduct that as you're moving it out of your estate and into people you love? I see, it's too much fun. Don't sit home playing checkers, for Christ's sakes. Sit down and scheme with the friends that you've made over the years. Sit down and say, what have you got going on? How can I help? Again, I mentioned Gary Johnston, but years ago, Gary asked me to do a thing on relationships and wealth building at his Vegas conference. And so I sat down and I did an outline. And I discovered that in my career, I had done 71 transactions with 4 families. You know how efficient that is? People who know and trust you and who you trust. You are making a mistake if you are not going back to the people you've done business with and ask for help and offer to help. It makes it so much easier. Wealth building is a team sport. Build your team. All right? I meant to get to this when I was talking earlier about when you're dealing with investors. Has anybody ever had somebody come up and say, call me when you find a good deal? You did hear that earlier, in case anybody was, well, 2 of us have, okay. In the real world, you should be hearing that more. Now, when somebody says, call me when you find a good deal, what do you tell them?
Okay.
I've been doing this for 57 years, and I have never found a good deal. Not one. What have I found? Opportunities, a chance to help, and I've done what? Molded it into a good deal. I made a good deal. I constructed a good deal. But you don't find a good deal. Now, when somebody is an investor and they are approaching you as a real estate agent or as a co-investor, this is the question you ask them. Please describe for me your favorite deal, the deal you've done that you're most proud of. When an investor comes to you and says, call me when you find a good deal, I'd like to hire you, I want to buy apartments every month for the rest of my life. Whatever, the guys who come to you who are at least pretend to be investors. All right? If you say, tell me about the deal you did that you're most proud of. Tell me about your very best deal. Number one, they may have never done a deal, in which case it's going to be hard for them to describe something. If they go out and study and find a deal and say, I didn't do this, but I saw this deal, or if they say, I did this is my favorite deal, what have they just done for you? Giving you a template. Now you know what to structure to. That person who did the lease option, that person who did the seller carry, that person who did the single payment note, that person who exchanged real estate. Once you hear their favorite, what they're most proud of, that's the template, right? When I moved to Oakhurst Shores in Seminole in '86, young family, I knock doors and I solicit allies. I have never bought a house knocking on doors. I have bought lots and lots and lots of houses with referrals from people whose doors I knocked. See, I go knock on the door and say, hi, my name is Pete Fortunato. I love your neighborhood. How long have you lived here? And the people in Florida might say, 10 years. And I say, boy, you've seen a lot of changes. And they have. You typically in Florida, it's gotten younger. And so they'll either hate that or like that. I don't care. But I want to find out as much as I can. I'm in that neighborhood because I like it. And I'll let them drone on and talk as long as they want, and I'll ask some questions. And then I say to them, when you find someone in the neighborhood who has an excess house, will you please, now those are important words, will you please? It's a question. It's a polite question. Call me or have them call me. And when they say yes, which they'll do only to get you the heck off their porch, then you write on a 3x5 card. I'm carrying it like this. I write it down. Looking for a house. Thank you very much. Sign my name, put my phone number, and leave it with them. Months later, years later, you get a phone call. Somebody says, gee, this is Mary Toledo. My brother lived in the house in Bay Pine subdivision, and he had to go into a nursing home, and he wants to come back, but he's not going to be able to. Our neighbor said you're looking for a house. Are you still interested? Those calls, I never know who that neighbor was, but I worked that neighborhood. That was valuable for me. Right? So I knocked the whole subdivision around my house, my new house, when I moved over to Seminole. One day I went out of the house, took the kids to school, came back. There's a realtor sign in the front yard. Oh, what does that mean? It means I failed, knocking on doors. They're supposed to call me first. There's a realtor sign in the front yard. Waterfront house on my street. Now it's waterfront, it's like parking spaces for boats in off the nice water. But a nice parking space for a boat. Good neighborhood. Good neighborhood. So I call the realtor. Say, my name's Pete Fortunato. I live right around the block from the house. I see your listing. When can I see it? So he make an appointment for Monday morning because he doesn't work Sundays. So anyway, Monday morning, I show up at the house and I can see there's this giant boat of a car in the driveway, so I knew the realtor was there. And so I went up to the door, and this young guy comes to the door and says, hi, are you Mr. Fortunato? Yep, I'd like to show you the house. Great, I'd like to see the house. That's why we came. And I'm walking in, and what's he doing? He's saying, this is the living room. I actually recognized that. And then we went, this is the living room, this is the dining room, this is the kitchen, this is the bathroom, this is the second bathroom, this is the linen closet, this is the ceiling. I mean, we're going through the damn house. And what am I looking for? What's the most important thing you see when you go to a house? The owners, the people. It's about their situation. So then, to make it worse, there's no one, I'm looking, praying there's somebody in this house. And we go out the back, it's an L-shaped house, and there's the dock, and he said, this is the water. So we're walking down to the dock, and we get down to the dock. I didn't want to hear about the damn dock, it's wood. I turn around, and there's an old couple sitting in the L of the house on plastic chairs on a patio. 1980s, late 80s. I didn't run, but I walked away from the realtor, went up to this couple, assuming they're the owners, not knowing, and said, why would you sell a nice house like this? And they said, oh, we love this house. We've lived here our whole lives, and we raised the children here, and well, why would you sell it? We're moving into Sea Towers, which is a condo a mile south. And they said, and our friends have already bought one on the same floor as we're in, and we're going to move there. And I said, well, when are you going to close? Oh, next Friday. Really? Mm-hmm. Well, what are you going to do if your house hasn't sold by then? I mean, next Friday's kind of pushing it. He said, oh, it has to. Because we've given a $5,000 deposit. We need to give them the other $70,000 next Friday. So what did I say? I love your house. I love your house. All I can do is help you save your condo, and then I'll buy your house as fast as I can. I said, I bet that you people have great credit. They go, oh, wonderful, 900. I said, well, I bet if you called Seminole Bank, which was the bank for most of the community, and you talked to them, I bet they'd make you a $70,000 loan on this house. He said, really? Well, why would that matter? I said, well, if you get the loan, then you'll have the money and you can buy your condo. And what did they say, do you think?
That's pretty good.
What do you think bothered them about that? They didn't want payments. They didn't want payments because they got a free and clear house. So I said, well, listen, I don't have the $200,000 you're asking for the house now. But if you'll borrow the 70, I'll lease it with the option to buy it, and I'll make all the payments for you so you can go live in your condo. And so they said, well, we'd like to get our $5,000 that we gave as a deposit, we'd like to get it back. So in the end, they borrowed $80,000 against their house, which gave them closing costs for the place, and they bought their place down there. We did that on a yellow pad, on the plastic table, on the patio, while the realtor did what? He watched. He didn't say anything. He didn't say anything. Then, when we finally agreed, that was it. They called the bank from the portable phone, not a cell phone, a portable back then. And the banker agreed. There's no brainer to make an $80,000 loan on that house in that neighborhood. What do you think the realtor said when we were done?
At my 3%.
I think it's funny that everybody thinks the realtor's only interest is the commission, because I've not found that to be the case. I've found some of them, but not.
You took advantage.
What do you think the realtor said?
How'd you do that?
He said, I never would have believed my parents would do that. And he hadn't cared, he hadn't probed, he hadn't found what was going on, he hadn't taken responsibility to create a deal. We created a deal. I lease optioned the house. I had payments on what? 40% of the house. I put 60% on the sideline using that lease option as a technique, making that house that was not affordable, affordable. That's your job. You're supposed to help people, and by helping people, you'll build wealth, and you'll build a war chest of people who will come to your aid when you need it. Thank you guys very much. Thank you.